I care about conference realignment. You probably care about conference realignment. We just don't care that much right now. You want to know why? Because we're 23 days away from the college football season getting on and popping. We got fall camp intel. We got quarterback battles. We have your headlines to jump into. Welcome into the Hard Count. We talk college football every single day on this wonderful platform that is the On3 YouTube channel. Right now is no different. We are live and living color. It is Thursday, August 3rd, 2023. We're so glad to have you here. You have a lot on your plate. You got work. You got school starting back up. Shout out to y'all that are at school. Maybe some of y'all are listening in between two-a-days if they still do two-a-days at the high school level. Some of y'all are listening at fall camp. We're so glad to have you here. Everything else can just kind of take a break. Whatever worries you got on your mind, you just kick them up, relax, because we're just talking about college football right now. So welcome in. Like I said, fall camp, it's here. We got intel from Lincoln to Knoxville. We got intel in Gainesville. We have fall camp intel, and we have it in bunches. Going to break that down for you, the latest from camps across the country. It is just so cool. I was talking with one of our writers yesterday, and I was just like, man, we've talked about so much for so long throughout the course of this offseason, all relevant, all important, all about the game that we love. But the fact that we're talking about the 2023 college football season and teams practicing, it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And with fall camp comes quarterback battles. We got some high-profile quarterback battles now. Alabama, they're going to have a quarterback derby. Ohio State, they start fall camp today. Kyle McCord, Devin Brown, who's it going to be? Heck, Florida, a little bit of quarterback intrigue there. I don't know if battle's the word you put to it, but we're going to give you not just a breakdown of the battle. We're going to go ahead and just call our shot here. We're going to predict who's going to win those battles, and we'll see how it shakes out here at the end of fall camp and maybe even into the season. A segment I've really enjoyed doing now has been listening to y'all and hearing what your most surprising college football headlines are going to be. And it's not an end of the season thing like, hey, who's going to win the national title? It is from week 0 all the way through Thanksgiving. What are some of the shocking / surprising headlines that we're going to see? And y'all have answered in elite fashion, so we'll break down some of those as well. I don't know if y'all have been keeping an eye on the recruiting trail, what's been going on, but we have some big-time commitments set on this very YouTube channel coming up this weekend. National recruiting analyst for us here at On3, Josh Newberg, is hosting 3 of those bad boys, one of which being 5-star safety KJ Bolden. So Josh is going to join us here a little bit later in the show and give us a good picture as to where things stand right now for him going into this weekend and who may end up being in position for winning the KJ Bolden sweepstakes. So make sure you don't miss that. Also, realignment. We prefaced it a little bit at the top of the show. I like realignment. I like that we talk about realignment. I'd be much more, let me rephrase that. I like that realignment is something that we can talk about. I'd be much more interested in realignment if it were March. Right now, I'm like, hey, we got college football about to be here. Like, unless something's actually going down, unless we have something finalized, then we can talk about it with a little more depth. Regardless, though, still important to our game, so we'll break that down. A couple of thoughts as it pertains to the tectonic plates that are shifting right now, so we'll spend a little bit of time on that. And then also, the Pulse the Program series rolling right along. Fittingly enough, we got the Florida State Noles up today, and we'll give you a good feel as to what's going on internally within that building, and then also the feel within that fan base. A lot of excitement, a lot of buzz right now in Tallahassee. So appreciate you all being tuned in right now. Shout out to everybody tuned in live. We have a little bit of a programming update here for you. We get to 100 likes, I'll tell you what it is. So thank you in advance for that. Wherever you listen, podcast, Apple, Spotify, however you digest and consume our show, we're very grateful, very thankful to have you a part of this. All right? So with that being said, let's get right into it, shall we? Fall camp is here. Fall camp is a beautiful time of the year where if you're a coach, player, support staff, whatever you do, this time of the year, any kind of surface that is within range for you is an acceptable bed. Like, people are taking naps in the locker room. People are taking naps on the training tables. Doesn't matter how you get your sleep because you got to get it in during the enormously long days that fall camp are. So with a lot of schools either starting camp today or having started camp in the last couple of days, what is some of the intel that we have gathered? I'm so glad you asked. Let's start with Lincoln, Nebraska. The Matt Rule era has begun. And the interesting thing about their current status under Matt Rule is they're currently living in the dorms during fall camp. Typically how this would work is you go to your, practice and then you go back to wherever you live. Apartment, if you're in on campus living, then I guess you go back to that. But Matt Rule has the entire team and a lot of the coaching staff currently living in the dorms. The reason why I'm actually interested about this and why I think this is actually pretty cool, this helps build team chemistry. Like, you are around your guys every single day. And the interesting thing about fall camp as well, for a lot of these places, school is not yet started back, or it's about to get started back. And so for the most part, it's just you and your boys on campus. It's just you and your guys hanging out, going through the dog days of summer and getting back to practice. And so to have everybody in the same building, I think that's going to pay dividends when it comes to the camaraderie side of things, because now you got a new staff, you got a lot of guys in through the portal who we'll talk about here, a lot of new pieces here, putting everybody in the same building throughout a difficult time that is fall camp, and I say difficult in the most loving way possible. I think that's going to help get this team to gel from a chemistry standpoint sooner rather than later. Also, Matt Rule is running 2 different practices right now. And this is not uncommon for him, given what he did at Baylor, which I was a part of. He has 1 practice going on for the young guys, so your freshmen, your guys that maybe are going to redshirt, and you have 1 other practice going on for the experienced guys. So those are going on at 2 different times. And the reason why this is worth noting, whenever you are a freshman, or if you are going to redshirt, typically what happens during fall camp is maybe you get like a handful of reps. Maybe you get a rep or 2 at the end of the team period. Maybe you get 1 rep during 7-on-7. And so you go through a 2-3 hour practice. And if you're a true freshman, you just got on campus, you may have gotten like 6 or 7 reps. What's the problem with that there? You're not getting developed. You're not able to step into that system and really start to digest it because you're not doing it. All your reps are having to be mental. Matt Rule said, well, we got some young cats that need to get developed. The best way to do that, have their own practice for those guys. So you have probably 40 or so reps for your young guys that need development, and then also getting the good work with some of the guys that you can potentially go into the fall with and be your starters. Worth noting, too, if some of those young guys are balling during that young guys practice, Matt Rule has a better sample size to say, hey, maybe we should pull him up to this practice over here. Maybe we need to take that true freshman and get him some reps right now. So I think that's worth noting. I think it's going to help them when it comes to the evaluation standpoint. They feel really good about Jeff Sims. Transfer quarterback they got from Georgia Tech. Tons of tools, big frame, a lot of experience. And the concern for Nebraska fans could be, well, where's this roster at with him? I mean, is he going to be able to be in a position to succeed? Because that was kind of the issue at Georgia Tech. Is there enough around him to be successful? And the feeling at Nebraska is, while there's some new pieces, there are some guys that have benefited from having that COVID year. So there is actually a fair amount of maturity on this roster. Jeff Sims, they feel really good about, like I just said. And a big part of his game is what he can do with his legs. But they have been very clear at Nebraska. They want to make sure they utilize him in the run game, but have it be meaningful runs. They don't want Jeff Sims taking 15, 20 carries a game. They want to use his legs when it's appropriate, but they're not calling quarterback power on 2nd and 1. Instead, they'll hand the ball to the running back, and they'll get their first down, and they'll keep those chains moving. So it's going to be an asset for them, but it's not going to be plan A. They want Jeff Sims to be a passer and run when it helps them. Billy Kemp, another transfer player for them, playing wide receiver. He may be the best receiver on this roster. If you watch the spring game, he showed up in a big way. He's one of those guys that you kind of just watch in 11-on-11, and he just sticks out like a sore thumb. Hey, he moves different. Hey, he separates different. Hey, he's crisp on his routes. He's a guy that I think they're going to depend on a lot this coming season. And then MJ Sherman, a linebacker transfer from Georgia. My rule of thumb is if you could play for Kirby Smart or Nick Saban on the defensive side of the ball they take a ton of pride in. If you were good enough to be on that roster, be recruited there, you're good enough for me. So they feel really good about him as well. They feel like he'll take on a very large role. And as a whole, they feel like they hit on a lot of these portal guys. And they're going to ask a lot of these portal guys to contribute for them during this season. So that's Nebraska for you. Notre Dame, they've been rolling here for a couple of practices now. And Sam Hartman, if you remember correctly, to rewind the tape, transferred from Wake Forest. He's the all-time touchdown pass leader in the ACC, played a lot of football, 6-year guy. And he got to Notre Dame. And some of the early returns on him in the spring were like, what's going on with Sam Hartman, man? It's kind of taking him a while to hit the ground running. Is Tyler Buckner maybe in this thing? They kind of go back and forth during the spring, and then Sam Hartman goes to the spring game and does what he does. They said during fall camp right now, he looks dialed in as ever. He looks like he picked up where he left off from that spring game. And the note that I heard was you could tell by what he's done at fall camp that he's been throwing to a lot of these guys throughout the duration of the entire summer. Like, the timing is down. He knows where to put the football for these guys. He knows where they're comfortable catching it. He knows where they're going to be coming out of their routes. Like, the timing is down pat. And that's a very good sign for Notre Dame faithful, because you're going to really need that wide receiver room to step up in a big way to maximize having Sam Hartman on your roster. So you love hearing their timing is good, their chemistry is good. Jaden Thomas is an absolute grown man of a wide receiver, 6'1", 220 pounds. Tyler Horka put something out on his Twitter page of Jaden Thomas running I guess it was a streak on the outside. Sam Hartman puts it up for him back shoulder, and all 6'1", 220 pounds of Jaden Thomas goes up, elevates, snags it, awkward body position, 1 foot down. That's a catch anywhere in college football. And so they're expecting big things from Jaden Thomas. They think he is probably going to be wide receiver 1 for them. We talk about it a lot on this show. You need the wide receiver room to separate and have somebody step up. They really think that's going to be him. Now, Chris Tyree played running back last year for Notre Dame. They are expecting him to start in the slot. They said he's totally embraced that new role. They said he caught 20,000 balls off the jugs machine. 20,000. So he's committed to it. He's transforming himself from a running back to a wide receiver. How he fits in that, I think, is going to be really interesting to watch for Notre Dame as they try and get this new offensive system rolling with Sam Hartman at quarterback. But Jaden Greathouse is a dude who absolutely snapped in that spring football game. For y'all that remember correctly, over 100 yards receiving in that game. He's a true freshman wide receiver from the state of Texas, 4-star kid coming out of high school, played against really good talent in the state of Texas. He is a dude they will depend on. Now, what kind of role he plays, I think fall camp will have some say in that. But they're saying that he picked up where he left off in the spring game, and it wasn't just a thing where the kid popped in one game and it had one good practice. Like, no, he's taken that and shown you good things throughout the duration of fall camp to this point. So they're excited about that wide receiver room. And then the last thing I want to say about Notre Dame, the defensive philosophy under defensive coordinator Al Golden is, in a word, more free. And I don't say free in the sense that you're doing less assignments and you have less guys with less on their plate. Like, they're still asking these guys to do quite a bit, actually be more versatile. But the feeling was last year, maybe it was a touch more complex than what was productive. And so Notre Dame now is hoping to just let these dudes that they have back on defense, 72% of that production, just kind of go out, play ball, be instinctive. We're going to ask a lot of you, but go play more instinctual. I think that's going to help them in the long run when it comes to Notre Dame. Tennessee, they've got fall camp rolling. They started fall camp yesterday, and the biggest thing that we've heard out of Knoxville, and it's only been one practice. They practiced in helmets and jerseys and shorts, so we're pretty much out there just running around. The biggest thing that we've heard from multiple people is they just look like a different football team physically. Like, you see some guys that look a little bit more muscular, a little bit faster, more explosive, and some of that is just the first day of fall camp, so their bodies are more healthy than they've ever been, more healthy than they will be when it comes to October and November, and you've had the duration of a beating on your body. But the thing is, they won the winter, I think is important to mention. They've bought into the strength program. They brought into what they're doing from a nutrition standpoint. Like, they did what they had to do in the winter. And that's good. Like, you're supposed to do that. You could control that. But they said that Aaron Beasley, Keenan Peely, Arian Carter, all three of those linebackers look really good physically, and they've transformed their bodies from where they were last season. Now, Dante Thornton, transfer wide receiver from Oregon. We've talked about him a lot on this show. If you watch this show, you probably already know about him, but they said he looks good, man. He's a matchup nightmare. This offense under Josh Heupel is built to create matchups. It's built to have your wide receivers win one-on-one. He's 6'5", runs a 4.40 reportedly. Like, he is set for a big year, and he looked good yesterday, is what they're saying. Also, John Campbell, transfer from Miami. He's all of 6'5", 320 pounds. Multiple people said this. He is going to be your left tackle. Darnell Wright, gone to the NFL. He's going to be the replacement. So they have some other pieces they're going to work in on the offensive line. It's not a totally new setup, but there's some other guys you're trying to work in at tackle and some other pieces you're trying to sort out there. But John Campbell will start for you at left tackle. He's got it locked down, is what is the word out of Knoxville. So the last thing we want to talk about here is Florida. And Florida is fascinating right now. We'll talk about the quarterback situation a little bit more in depth later in this live show, but Max Brown is, right now, it sounds like pushing that room. Now, is he going to start for you at quarterback? Probably not, but it sounds like he's making a real strong push for that backup role. Said he looks more accurate, more precise than he was this time last year, so you like to hear that a quarterback is making strides under your offensive-minded head coach and Billy Napier. The running backs working a little bit more in the pass game, it sounds like. And if I'm a Florida fan, the encouraging thing to me hearing that is, okay, our best players, to be real with you, outside of Ricky Pearsall, our best players, Trevor Etienne, Montrell Johnson, we're going to find more ways to get them the football. Okay, that's going to be a part of this offense, which I think is just good sense if you're a Florida Gator fan. RJ Moten, transfer from Michigan. Remember, he was kind of that tweener, linebacker, safety, got there after spring. They've been really impressed with him. I think he contributes for them in a big way this coming season. He looks fluid, getting in and out of his breaks, really transformed his body to be a true safety, it sounds like. And so they're encouraged by him and the way that he's been able to progress so quickly, having just got to Florida in the summer and is now looking like he's caught up and looking like he is comfortable in this scheme. Last thing, they feel worlds better about the defensive line depth, which, I mean, I cannot overstate the importance of this for Florida. Last year, they had some good players. They had some strong ones, but when they got to the twos, when you had some guys get banged up over the course of a season, there was some wear and tear on your body, and when you were playing first and second down, now you're just playing first down, like at that point, there was kind of a drop-off for Florida. They feel much better about that. They got Cameron Jackson through the transfer portal, transfer from Memphis. He's a big boy. They also got Will Norman, who's a true freshman, 296 pounds, 6'4". I believe Cameron Jackson's somewhere in the range of 6'6". Like, they got some real size now on that defensive line. They think that's going to help be the difference maker for them to have more sustainability throughout the course of the season for the Florida Gators. So across the board, man, fall camp is on and popping. We're going to have intel for you every single show because we got a ton going on right now as we get closer and closer and head on into college football season. So make sure you're locked in, make sure you're subscribed. This will not be the last time we drop some intel on this very show. I love it, man. Fall camp is a beautiful thing. Fall camp is really when you turn the page and it's like the official kickoff of college football season. Like, media days are kind of a version of that for us, I suppose, to a degree. But when you actually put the helmet on, when the guys that are on your roster hit the field and you start running individual drills and you get some 11 on 11, like, that is a beautiful thing. And you can't help but smile and feel just a little bit joyful when something like that happens. Appreciate everybody tuned in live, man. Y'all are phenomenal. We're about to get rolling here into the college football season, and we have an update when it comes to how this show is going to be scheduled. It's good news, I promise. So make sure you like the video. We get to over 100 likes before we get off the air. We'll tell you what that new scheduling note's going to be. We're going to tell y'all eventually when it gets here, but if you want to get a little sneak peek, we're not going to put it on Twitter, not going to put it on Instagram just yet, but if you want to get a little bit of an early heads up for how you want to structure your week to make sure you listen to the hard count, would encourage you to like the video so we can make sure that y'all are in the loop. Okay, with fall camp comes the inevitable, beautiful, and terrifying thing that is quarterback battles. And this is a unique season because we have a lot of high-profile quarterback battles, a lot of teams that have a real shot to compete for some college football playoff, trophies, honestly. I mean, some teams that can really make some noise when it comes to their conference title race and maybe making the CFP. Some of those teams now are set to decide on who their quarterback's going to be. I'm going to say this right now, I'm not talking about Georgia. Carson Beck is the starter there. We'll talk more Georgia here later in this live show, but as far as I'm concerned, Georgia is pretty much set at the quarterback position, and I think they feel that way internally. But you know who's not set? Actually, the furthest thing from is the Alabama Crimson Tide. How about that? Nick Saban has got not one, not two, but three quarterbacks to choose from, in my humble opinion, when it comes to fall camp right now. And it's interesting because you saw Ty Simpson and you saw Jalen Murrow during the spring, and Nick Saban, it sounds like, didn't see enough of what he wanted. So he says, you know what, let's go to the portal. Who's in there? Tyler Buckner, Tommy Rees's former starting quarterback at Notre Dame. Let's bring him in, spice this competition up a little bit. And it has been very evident that he is not going to be handed the starting quarterback job by any stretch of the imagination. So where do things stand for Alabama in the starting quarterback battle right now? And I think it comes down to the major question, if I'm Nick Saban, can I trust you as the starting quarterback at Alabama? Can I trust you not to make the big play? Can I trust you to make the right play? So let's break this down a little bit more. For Jalen Milroe, he, without question, has the potential for the most big plays. Now, the unfortunate caveat of that, the other side of that, is he's got potential for the biggest play offensively, also potential for the biggest play defensively. And talking to Greg McElroy, former Alabama quarterback and now with ESPN during SEC Media Days, I thought he made a ton of sense talking about where Jalen Milroe stands right now. Extremely gifted, but when you look at Alabama a season ago, they turned the ball over 16 times as an offense during the course of the season. Jalen Milroe was responsible for 5 of those bad boys. So Greg McElroy is saying, hey, listen, man, I've been under Saban. I know what that's like being his quarterback. That's not something that he just, etch-a-sketches and dry erase board and I'll forget about that when the new season gets here. That doesn't help you when it comes to Nick Saban. So the trust factor with Jalen Milroe consistently making the right play, I wonder how that shakes out. I'm sure fall camp will give us a good litmus test for it, but I'm curious to see how that shakes out when it comes to some of that scrimmage intel. Now, Tyler Buchner, we just mentioned him, transferred from Notre Dame to Alabama. Very important to note, he did not get any time with Alabama during spring football. He wasn't there. And I think there's something to be said, especially at a place like Alabama, for winning the locker room. And it is very difficult to win the locker room getting there after winter conditioning and after spring football. Not just because your time is less than you would have had if you got a full semester, a full spring semester under your belt, not from a timing standpoint. I think there's something to be said for just going through the suck with your boys. Just being in the foxhole with your guys. Because winter conditioning and spring football, I can tell you, having been through both of those, they are a lot of fun, and you look back on them fondly with great memories, but those times of the year suck. You go to bed at, let's call it 9 o'clock, you got to wake up at 4 or 5 o'clock to get to your workout at 6 and be ready and taped up and stretched out, and dude, those times are brutal. Those times have a ton of anxiety around them. And those times, by nature of how much they suck, you really have a lot of your leaders step up in those moments. And those are the moments where you build admiration for your teammates and where there's a lot of team bonding going on because you go through such hard things together. And it's not Tyler Buchner's fault he wasn't there for those things, but I think it does create an uphill battle for him to ultimately win over this team and ultimately win the starting quarterback job. So my prediction for who's going to be the starting quarterback for Alabama ultimately is Ty Simpson. And some part of this for Ty Simpson, to be 100% fair, is the unknown with him is undefeated. We have the smallest sample size on Ty Simpson. There's no way around that. Couple of things I would say, though. When it comes to ability for Ty Simpson, there is no question mark for me about if he has that or not. It is there. He was a 5-star quarterback out of high school. He was a top 3 quarterback for us here at On 3 in that cycle. Dude can play some football. The biggest thing with me, with Ty Simpson, is when I watched him during the spring football game, it wasn't glamorous. Yeah, there were some mistakes. Yeah, there were some things you don't love, some things you got to clean up without a doubt. But this dude had zero issue taking what the defense gave him. And I think if you can take what the defense gives you in this Tommy Rees offense, you're going to be set up for success. So I think the ability is there. I think he's going to do what is asked of him as the quarterback at Alabama. Does he win the Heisman Trophy? I don't know. I don't think it's going to be built for him to really have the offense go through him. But I think he will do what is required of him. I think he will be consistent. I think he'll make the right decision based on what I saw in that spring football game. And ultimately, I think by Texas, he will be your starting quarterback. Do they make a decision by game 1? I think if you have the luxury to let those cats battle it out and have one more real sample, an in-game sample for these guys, great. But for me, Ty Simpson is going to be the starting quarterback at Alabama. If you're watching live, please like the video. Also, we're on podcast, Apple, and Spotify. Type in The Hard Count with JD Pickell, and we'll be there. So thank you for that. Also, subscribe to the channel. We are surging towards 100,000 subscribers. Would love to have you a part of the operation. So thank you in advance for that. So our next quarterback battle we're going to predict is Florida. In Florida, for me, this is not so much about who's going to win this job out of fall camp. It's going to be Graham Mertz. It's going to be Graham Mertz, the transfer from Wisconsin. He's got the experience. And when I look at the Florida quarterback room, it's a lot like buying a couch. You have a need, you went and got one, you're going to use it. You needed a quarterback in there by nature of how you felt after the season ended, after AR went to the NFL. So you went and got Graham Mertz. Graham Mertz isn't going in to just hang out and sit the bench and maybe play by game 6. No, Graham Mertz is going to be your starting quarterback. That's the way it sounds out of fall camp so far as well. Also worth noting, when it comes to the quarterback situation at Florida, I don't know that someone has to just take the job by the throat in fall camp. Like if Graham Mertz doesn't have incredible reports out of the fall scrimmages and if he's not just lighting it up, like I really believe that the tie in this race goes to the transfer portal quarterback. So as long as he doesn't just lose the job, walk in there and just totally throw the ball to the other team like 3 times a scrimmage, I think he's probably going to be your guy. Feel very confident in saying that. The real question to me, though, is who's your starting quarterback in October? Because my question around the offensive line for Florida is, do you have an offensive line in place that allows you to play Graham Mertz as your starting quarterback? Because Graham Mertz, a lot of experience, 32 starts under his belt, really good off-play action, it sounds like. That's kind of been the stat that's floated around Florida Twitter. But even so, man, if he's not able to actually get through his progression, we got problems. Then if we got a statue back there playing quarterback and we can't protect him, like, hey, we got to find a way to get this play started. And Jack Miller, I thought, looked pretty decent during the spring football game. And decent is maybe a generous term because the Florida offense had troubles to begin with. So maybe you're saying, hey, good for our defense. But he showed some good wiggle, showed some good mobility getting out of the pocket and throwing the football around. Like, if you aren't able to consistently protect the quarterback, I wonder if Jack Miller is your guy later in the season. So keep an eye on that. I think that's something to watch when it comes to the Florida quarterback situation, that is. But again, prediction for that one, without question, Graham Mertz, game 1, he will be your starting quarterback in Gainesville. Another program, though, that has a ton at stake in 2023 is the Ohio State Buckeyes. C.J. Stroud gone to the league. What does life after C.J. Stroud look like? The beautiful part for Ryan Day and for the Ohio State faithful is you have a first world problem in picking between 2 5-star quarterbacks. You got Devin Brown, you got Kyle McCord. Now, if it's me, I would love to let this thing go into fall. I would love to have 3 games in front of me and say, here's how we looked when there were live bullets. I know what it looked like in 11-on-11 when we had a real game scenario. But for Ryan Day, that's probably not his style, given how he's operated with picking a quarterback previously. We'll probably know somewhere around mid-August. So I think that's that. I think we'll find out before the season is what I'm trying to tell you. But it feels like between these two right now, from a 30,000-foot view, ability is fairly comparable. Like there's something said about Devin Brown and his mobility he brings to the table. I had someone tell me they thought Kyle McCord, even last year with C.J. Stroud on the roster, had the best arm on the team. So take that as you will. And I think everyone is going to say when they talk about this quarterback battle, hey, experience is the difference for Kyle McCord. He's been in the system longer. He's been around Ryan Day longer. And I think that's 100% true. I do not want to discredit that by any stretch of the imagination. But I think there's something to be said at Ohio State for being the guy. And when I say being the guy, I mean there is a difference between being the quarterback and then being the alpha everybody looks to, everybody respects, and sees as the leader and trusts within the team, within the staff, within the building. And I think that's who Kyle McCord is. The reason why I think that is he could have left last year if he wanted to. Like, hey, C.J. Stroud's going to be the guy. Coach, thanks so much. I'm leaving after spring. I can go play somewhere else. Because remember, there was no shortage of options, no shortage of places that needed a starting quarterback. Needed a 5-star quarterback like Kyle McCord. I promise you, he could be playing college football last year as a starting quarterback at some Power 5 school. Instead, he says, no, I want to be a Buckeye. I've seen every single guy that I've been around in that quarterback room that started go and be a first-round pick. I'm bought into what Ohio State is. I'm going to work in silence. And that's what I've heard about Kyle McCord is that he works in silence. He's respected as a leader, was one of the leaders of that recruiting class. Like Kyle McCord now has paid his dues. And when you see a guy just commit to the team that way, as a teammate in that locker room, like that just grows your respect for an individual so much. So when it is Kyle McCord's time to be the starting quarterback at Ohio State, I think that makes the difference for him. I think that leadership aspect could be the difference maker for him. And this is not to talk down on Devin Brown by any stretch of the imagination. I think long-term, if you wanted to project, there's some people that probably would tell you maybe Devin Brown has a higher ceiling and all that. But I'm just saying for Kyle McCord, the way that he is trusted within this program and the way that he has operated behind C.J. Stroud and what he did backing him up, I think that is the difference maker. And I think that leadership is crucial at a place like Ohio State. Because I need a leader when we're down 7 against Michigan and we got one drive to win the game. I need a leader when we got Penn State on the ropes and we got to punch it in the finish. Like, I need someone the team is going to rally around. Again, I'm not saying they won't do this for Devin Brown. I'm saying what Kyle McCord has done at Ohio State up to this point, that means something, and I think that's the difference maker for him with how the teammates and coaches perceive him. So Kyle McCord, for me, is my prediction to be the starting quarterback at Ohio State. some point during fall camp, I expect us to get that announcement. Now, the most interesting quarterback battle, it's got to be Ole Miss, right? Because Lane Kiffin, he's got Jackson Dart on the roster, and then he goes in and brings in not one, but two quarterbacks. You got Walker Howard from LSU joining the roster, and you got Spencer Sanders still playing college football from Oklahoma State to Ole Miss, and Spencer Sanders has no more eligibility left if he does not start this coming season. He's got 1 year left, all right? So I think for this quarterback derby, it is all about what Lane Kiffin prefers. You're saying, JD, of course, he's the head coach. He's going to decide who wants to be the starting quarterback. His preference is obviously the law here. Yes, there is no question about that. But I think when you look at the game plan for Ole Miss, you would expect it to still be, hey, feed the beast in our backfield that is Quinshon Judkins, for a lot of people's money, the best back in America. Let's give him the football a lot again. Okay, so let's break this down then. I think Walker Howard is probably your guy for the future, and I think that's probably the consensus within the Ole Miss operation. That's my feel for it. So look at Jackson Dart, you look at Spencer Sanders. Spencer Sanders, a fit for this RPO offense without question. Without question. I mean, he's a great athlete, and he had a solid career at Oklahoma State, a lot of experience. But I think it comes down to, do you want to stick with that game plan of feeding Quinshon Judkins? I would expect you to do that. Okay, so do you want to have a complement to that? Or do you want to double down on being dangerous in the run game? Because Spencer Sanders, really good athlete, like I talked about. He's had highs, he's had lows. But over the course of his career, he has been 67 touchdowns, 40 interceptions. I understand he does a lot with his legs. I get that. But throwing the football, if you want to be two-dimensional, that makes me nervous. I don't like that if I want to throw the football at Ole Miss and if I'm Lane Kiffin. And I think to win games in the SEC, if they want to compete for the West, you got to have more than one trick up your sleeve. And so in order to do that, I think you go with Jackson Dart. And a lot of my hope with Jackson Dart would be that the buzz around him during spring football about him improving in this system and being, a little bit more further along in this RPO scheme, I think that would be where my hope lies. Because I know I got a running back in Quinshon Judkins. I know I can run the football. Jackson Dart was no slouch with his legs last year either. But if he's able to progress, if it's Darty season in Oxford and Jackson Dart propels this team forward with his arm, well, then you got to watch out for Ole Miss. And I think that is, without a doubt, the way that I would go if I were Lane Kiffin. But again, it comes down to his preference, and we'll see how this goes when it comes to the scrimmages in fall camp. Keep an eye on who throws interceptions, especially with this system, because you got to be able to stay on schedule. It's about running the football. It's about staying, in 2nd and 6, in 3rd and 3. Whoever turns the ball over the most, and this is probably for all these quarterback battles, I don't think gets the nod. So there's the novel analysis for you. UCLA is the last school I want to talk about here. They're fascinating. You got a 3-horse race here. You got Colin Schlee, who transferred in, I believe, from Kent State. You got Dante Moore, 5-star true freshman. Remember, they flipped him at the 11th hour, it seemed like, from Oregon to UCLA when Bo Nix said he was coming back. You got Ethan Garbers. For me, I'm just trusting the writing on the wall that I'm seeing. I'm trusting the smoke. Because Dante Moore, a big part of his recruitment, a big part of his decision to go to UCLA was the opportunity to play early. And so the fact that he flipped so late in the cycle, and a lot of it, again, was because Bo Nix said, I want one more year at Oregon. If Dante Moore went to Oregon and sat for a year, got a red shirt and played, nobody's blaming Dante Moore. But it was important to him to play early. And so I have to believe that there was some sort of communication throughout his recruiting process that, hey, you will have every shot to win this job. And I don't think this gets talked about enough with Dante Moore and with Chip Kelly and UCLA. Chip Kelly's offense and his scheme is what makes Dante Moore playing early so possible. Because Chip Kelly, y'all that have watched him for any length of time, you know this. He goes fast, and going fast keeps the defense off balance. When the defense is off balance, it is hard for them to disguise their picture, to disguise if they're going to blitz a guy or not, because you're trying to catch your breath and trying to get lined up so you don't have a missed assignment, let alone dress anything up. So for a true freshman quarterback in Dante Moore, who already has a ton of ability, if he's able to pick up the offense quickly, the picture for the defense, I don't think is going to be crazy for him. I don't think it's going to be a thing where he has to get used to reading college defenses at some new elite level. What he's going to see is going to be, I think, to a degree, simplistic enough to where his ability can then shine in Chip Kelly's offense. So I think Dante Moore is going to start for UCLA. Whether it's week 1 or not, We'll see, but I would be surprised if he's not starting for them by the end of the first month of the season. But I'll go ahead and pick him right now to start game 1 if we're calling our shot in fall camp. So Dante Moore is my starting quarterback for UCLA. For Ole Miss, I think it's Jackson Dart. For Ohio State, it's Kyle McCord. For Alabama, it's our good friend Ty Simpson. And for Florida, it's going to be Graham Mertz. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts when it comes to that. That's why we love fall camp, man. A lot of rosters, a lot of depth charts now starting to take place. A lot of buzz around, well, who's going to start at this position? Who's going to start at that position? Do we have depth here? Like, fall camp is for figuring it out. You figure it out internally at fall camp, and then when it comes to the season, that's when you really start to get a gauge for, okay, were we right during fall camp? So, speaking of the season, it is 23 days away. How about that, man? Michael Jordan days away from the college football season. Again, we got an announcement here for how we're going to operate during college football season. We're at 50 likes right now. If everyone tuned in live could like the video, we'll be well over 100. We can tell y'all what our schedule is going to be during the season. So, would appreciate y'all doing that. We'll keep the streak alive of 100 likes per show before we get off the air. Now, if you're not already following me on Instagram and on Twitter, you can find me there at JD Piquel. And the reason why I say that is, one, I just want to be able to interact with y'all and have more of this communal feel when we're live and when we're off the air, like all that. We appreciate you helping build that and cultivate that. So that's the first part. The other part is we like to hear from y'all a pretty frequent amount. Like my DMs stay open like 7-Eleven. And I put out a question to y'all on both those platforms, on Instagram and on Twitter, and said, what would be the most surprising headlines for you that we're going to get during this college football season? Kind of a call your shot, if you will. And so y'all answered in full force. We got great questions from both Twitter and from Instagram. And we're just going to kind of read those off here and break them down. And what would they mean? How likely are they? So it's kind of a fun exercise to see where we stand before the college football season. So Johnny Rockets on Twitter, which is a elite user handle, by the way, he says Graham Mertz is going to lead college football in QBR, and the Gators are going to be 7-0 heading into the Georgia game. Now, the Graham Mertz QBR thing is a little bit harder for me to buy into, and the Gators being 7-0, yeah, this would be surprising, without a doubt. You are true to form here, Johnny Rockets. You are right on the money. It would be surprising, no way around it. But if it were to happen, I don't think we look at Graham Mertz and what he's doing on the football field. I don't think we look so much at how Florida's playing offensively. To me, if Graham Mertz is playing well, that means he was set up in good situations. That means that offense is probably not starting within their own 10 a whole lot. It also means they're probably not having to play from behind as much as they did a season ago, maybe. So for me, I think if this happens, you're getting tremendous returns from your defense. Everything we've said about the depth, everything we've said about Austin Armstrong, they are balling if they are 7-0 and if Graham Mertz is playing well. Because if Graham Mertz is able to just kind of let the game come to him, that means the defense is holding it down. Where you could run into trouble is, hey, we're down 14-0. It's the second quarter. We got to find a way to start answering scores here. We got to get outside of ourselves offensively. So if Graham Mertz is balling, it means the defense is probably balling, and this whole thing is working in a complementary fashion, and life is good. Now, if they were to be 7-0, again, that's a very big ask, but it's college football, so let's break it down. That would mean they would have to go 4-0 in these games: at Utah, Tennessee at home, at Kentucky, and at South Carolina. It's a lot to ask. Is it impossible? By no stretch of the imagination. Is it likely? Not so much for me. Now, if they were to go 7-0, let's zoom out a little bit. 7-0 going into Georgia, got the world's largest outdoor cocktail party in Jacksonville. It's going to be a scene in itself. What are we saying about Billy Napier if they're 7-0? Forget the rest of the schedule. Forget they play LSU. Forget that game against Georgia. Like, if they were to be 7-0, one, they've already hit the over in Vegas. They've surpassed that 5.5 win mark the first 6 weeks of the season. And Billy Napier, how much chatter was around him being the right guy for the job and what he's going to do at Florida, what he hasn't done at Florida, like all that chatter, just take the volume knob and you crank that thing all the way down. All the way down. Because at the very least, if you were to lose out, I mean, there's probably some more chatter around that, but you'd be 7-5. You'd have something to pitch on the recruiting trail going forward. And news for y'all, Florida's already hot on the recruiting trail. And I know y'all already know that, but think about what this would do for them if they were to go 7-0 through the first half of the season. Like, that would be enormous for them. That would be straight up rocket fuel for Gainesville. So, is this likely? No, but there is enormous ripple effects that could come from this kind of situation happening by nature of what it would require and by nature of what it would mean on the recruiting trail and for Billy Napier. Braxton, or bcutch07, as he's referred to on Instagram, got at me on Instagram, and he brought another surprising headline out for us. We've prefaced this a little bit actually on this show. He says South Carolina upsets Georgia, at Georgia, mind you, and they go ahead and jump on that elevator all the way into the top 10 of the college football rankings. Sheesh. I mean, can you imagine if this were to happen? If South Carolina goes to Athens, Georgia, and takes down the two-time national champions, there'd be a lot that would have to happen. And when I was thinking about this, the most simplistic way to break this down in my mind is it would mean that some huge variables that we just have no idea about right now showed themselves in this game. And what those could be, I think the first place you look is, okay, what's new in this game for Georgia? Because the roster is, to be real, head and shoulders better than what South Carolina has right now. It's not knocking South Carolina. Kirby Smart's just been that dude on the recruiting trail. Okay, so what would have to go wrong for them? I think the new piece with Mike Bobo and whoever your new quarterback is, it's going to be Carson Beck, there would have to be some real surprising issues for them. And I think that would probably show itself in the form of turnovers and not being on the same page, and maybe you're not taking South Carolina seriously. Like, it is a dumpster fire, probably a dumpster fire early if you're Georgia and you end up dropping this game to South Carolina at home. The other part of that, I would imagine that something in Georgia's run game just isn't clicking. And maybe it's South Carolina stepping up in a big way. Maybe Big Tonka Hemingway kind of has his way up front and has just a Superman kind of day. But they allowed 200 yards rushing last year. A game, did South Carolina. That's the big part you're worried about for this defense. Georgia ran the football, I think they were right around over 200 yards a game. So I would imagine Mike Bobo is going for a more finesse style in this game. They think they can throw it around the yard, and Carson Beck maybe has a couple of errant throws, 2 picks in the first half. Whoa, Nelly, what's going on in Athens? On the other side of things, though, for South Carolina, I think you see November Spencer Rattler show himself. And you say, okay, what we saw against Tennessee, what we saw against Clemson from Spencer Rattler, that's real. That wasn't just right place, right time, right scheme, right throws. No. That's like, hey, Spencer Rattler is that dude now. He's clicking. He's got it. This is who he is. And I would imagine Juice Wells, if they were to beat Georgia, has probably north of 150 yards receiving in that game. Like, that's probably what it would take in my mind for South Carolina to end up beating Georgia in that game. So the big picture, though, if South Carolina takes down Georgia at the crib, what are we saying about Georgia? What's going on with the offense? Hey, they had more talent and they lost at home. Like, what is up with Georgia? They got a real look in the mirror kind of moment for them if they want to win the SEC and get back to the college football playoff and go for a three-peat. Three-peat, very difficult to do, mind you, as Kirby Smart and company knows. But if they were to drop this one early in the year, real gut check time, real look in the mirror time for the good people in Athens. Now, for South Carolina, though, Spencer Rattler automatically, you would have to imagine, jumps way up in the power rankings for the Heisman Trophy. And there's a long way to go till you get there from this game. But even more for South Carolina, like, if you beat Georgia at home, what can't you do? Look at the rest of the schedule. At Tennessee, you got Clemson. Is there a tougher game on this schedule than at Georgia? Now it's college football, so I'm not saying we get South Carolina, the version they got in that game, every single week, but you got to feel differently about Shane Beamer and company and what they're going to accomplish in 2023 should they slay the Dragon in Athens that third game of the season. So I'm not predicting it, far be it, but if this were to happen, it would be a very interesting week following in both Athens, Georgia, and Columbia, South Carolina. Now, we got another question from y'all, or another headline from y'all, kind of in this same vein, and I think the username will make a lot of sense as to why we got this kind of question. It says, the user for this, we'll restart that. Vols fan number 1 says, Georgia quarterback room is in limbo after a shaky start. So I'm going to go ahead and assume that we're thinking that the South Carolina game, at worst for Georgia, a little bit shaky for the quarterback room, given this headline, that's what we're saying. If the quarterback room starts shaky, my question isn't the quarterback room. My question is, what's up with the offense? What's up with this new approach under Mike Bobo? It must be a new approach because what we had last year, schematically, was second to none, in my opinion, under Todd Monken. Like, we must have gotten away from how we're executing there. Now, the good news for Georgia is the schedule is not daunting. So they're going to have, some time to acclimate here and kind of find their footing and figure it out. Remember, they looked shaky against Missouri, looked shaky against Kentucky. Didn't matter when they were hoisting the national title trophy. Also, excuse me, getting choked up just talking about college football. Also, if you have to make a change in that quarterback room, you feel pretty good about who you have in there. I mean, Gunnar Stockton, 4-star guy, Brock Vandagriff, 5-star guy. If Carson Beck can't get it done, it's not like some substantial drop-off from a talent standpoint. Like, you got some dudes in that room. So if it doesn't go as planned early, you can probably pivot without too much issues, in my humble opinion. But the bad news would be, what's going on, man? This isn't supposed to be hard. Like, this is not supposed to be a difficult job playing quarterback at Georgia because of everything they have around them. The defense, stocked with dudes. 70% of the production is back from that national championship defense. Tons of weapons. Brock Bowers, Dominique Lovett, Ladd McConkey. You got dudes throw the football to. The run game's solid with Dejan Edwards. Like, we should be in good shape here. Everything is built out around us at the quarterback position to be successful. So what's the issue? Well, again, going back to the issue, I'd be concerned with the apparatus and the system that Georgia is running should the quarterback not be successful. Now, again, I do not anticipate this happening. This is not my prediction, but given this headline, I think those would be some things that you would have to look at when it comes to the Georgia quarterback room if they are to potentially have a shaky start at some point in time early in the college football season. Now, this was a great one we got through Instagram, and there's a couple of layers to this, so we're actually going to go ahead and clip this as a one-off video in itself. So SC Sports Nation hit me up on Instagram, and his headline is that USC is going to win the national title, and they're going to beat Oklahoma in the college football playoff. Now, I'm interpreting this as Oklahoma is who they meet in the national title game. And the ripple effects on multiple fronts here are enormous. I mean, the obvious, if USC were to win the national title, is your defense went from bad, let's call a spade here, allowed 30 points a game last year, to good, to put it simply. Not bad to not bad to they were serviceable. You went from bad to good. So I'm imagining you're somewhere in the range of allowing 24 points a game, 25 points a game if you're USC on defense. That would be bad to good, in my humble opinion, a 5-point improvement. That would mean that those transfer portal additions on the defensive side of the football, all 8 of them, paid dividends. Bear Alexander is probably a dude for you. Anthony Lucas, transferred from Texas A&M, probably a dude for you. Mason Cobb, a guy who they expect to lead the defense at linebacker from Oklahoma State, probably a dude for you. So if they are who we believe they're going to be at USC, then the line of scrimmage is much more fortified on the defensive side of the ball. So you're not running how you ran against Tulane. You're not running how Utah ran the football. Like, we're better at tackling. We're kind of keeping things a little bit more solidified up front, to put it in a blunt fashion. But the offense is where I really want to focus, because it's obvious the defense have to improve. But the offense, I think, should USC win a national title, the offense would go from elite, right around 40 points a game last year, to historic. For USC to win a national title, I think that's what it would require. Because there's going to be some games, if they get to the college football playoff and play a team like a Georgia, play a team like a Michigan, if they meet any one of those teams on their road to a national title, they will not have the edge up front. And that's not knocking what they did in the portal. Again, I just told you they probably showed up and did a really good job as their first year on campus. But even so, man, you're not going to have a better line than Michigan, not going to have a better line than Georgia. So what is that going to mean for the offense? It means you have to dictate terms of that football game. What does dictating terms look like for me from a number standpoint? I think you got to go 2019 LSU on them. That 2019 team at LSU that had Joe Burrow, they averaged 48 points a game offensively. For USC to win a national title, I think you got to be right in that neighborhood, 48, 49 points a game. I think that's what it will take. Because when the defense doesn't have the edge or doesn't have enough to hold up against one of those teams, which you would imagine is probably the situation you find yourself from a personnel standpoint, it's got to be a track meet. It's got to be, okay, it is what it is. You got to match scores with us. Ready? Go. 49 points a game. That's what I think it would take for USC. You pull up to the facility, pull up to the stadium, tape your ankles, drink your Gatorade, get your smelling salts. You better be able to keep scores with us. That's what I think USC would have to do for them to win a national title. So if they were to win a national title and the situation plays out how it would, what does it say about USC? Well, all the talk about Lincoln Riley, and he can't win the big one, and he's just a portal guy, all that noise just kind of gets turned down quite a bit. You're not talking about that anymore. You refer to him as national champion, Lincoln Riley. Caleb Williams, if he's not the GOAT at USC in terms of the best player to ever come through there, after winning a national title and probably winning a second Heisman Trophy if they win a national title, he's one of them. He's on the Mount Rushmore, man. And this also, I think, for future teams, sets a path, gives a blueprint for how you can flip your roster in 2 seasons via the transfer portal and win a national title. That would set the blueprint for, I think, future coaches as to how they can do it, when they need to look, positions, all that. Now, Caleb Williams obviously is a part of their transfer portal success, so that's a pretty big variable to hit on, but you hear what I'm saying. I think it does kind of impact how coaches could build through the portal if USC gets to the top of the mountain this coming season. Now, the interesting part about this headline, SC Sports Nation has USC beating Oklahoma in the national title game. And given what we know about USC and Oklahoma, they don't like each other, and that's fine. You don't got to like each other playing college football. It's a beautiful part about this. We glorify rivalries here. But I think the impact for Oklahoma, should they make the national title game and lose, what are we saying about Oklahoma? There are people, this offseason saying, I don't know if Brent Venables is even a head coach. Well, if he takes Oklahoma from 6-7 to competing for a national championship, I think he's a head coach. I think he's got the chops. The other part of this is they probably won the Big 12. My, how the turntables, to quote Michael Scott. Like, that'd be the situation right now for Oklahoma, should they go and play for a national title. The transfer portal, what they did on defense, that obviously came to fruition quick, fast, in a hurry. They put that together under Brent Venables in a very short amount of time. And you probably feel worlds better about entering into the SEC if you're Oklahoma, coming off of a national title game appearance. All the chatter around what's Oklahoma going to do, what's Texas going to do. How are we talking about Oklahoma if they play for a national title? Very, very differently than how we did this past offseason, which I think is pretty straightforward. But we're at least talking about them being in that top tier within the SEC. So the last thing, though, for Oklahoma, what does it mean for recruiting for them? They had a top 10 class in 2023. They won 6 football games. What happens if they win double-digit football games and play for a national title? That was my rocket sound for those of y'all listening on podcast. It would explode. It would absolutely take off. Oklahoma already has brand and resources and all that, but if they were to put a product on the field under Brent Venables, have proof of concept, hey, now look out for Oklahoma. Even if they don't win the national title, even if it stings a little bit losing to USC and your former head coach, like, the future for Oklahoma would be extremely, extremely bright. So either side of this, you play for a national title, both second-year head coaches at their own destinations, you got to feel pretty good about where you stand when that college football playoff does expand. So a great headline here from SC Sports Nation, but the ripple effects for USC beating Oklahoma in a national title in 2023, yeah, a lot to unpack with that one, to say the least. That's been a lot of fun. I appreciate y'all contributing to that. Again, if you want to contribute to that and you want to get us your headlines, we're going to ask again on the Instagram. We're going to ask again on Twitter. I'll post a tweet here and I'll put a question box, I guess, whatever they're called on Instagram. But that's the best part about this show. We get to hear from y'all. And that is the beautiful part about college football as a whole. It's a communal thing, and y'all are the community. So thank you in advance for that. We had to talk about it during this show. Before we do this, actually, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. We're surging towards 100,000 subscribers, and would love to have you here. So thank you for that. I'm not going to ask too much more of y'all because y'all already show up in droves every single time we do. This isn't fun to talk about. I'm going to be real with y'all. We got some conference realignment chatter. It's just that right now. It's just chatter because Colorado moved to the Big 12 and Florida State's been flirting with it for forever. So we got to kind of give you our thoughts and predictions when it comes to conference realignment. Because the report that came out was Oregon and Washington. There's some smoke around them in the Big 10 and potentially adding there. I'll start with predictions, then I'll get to my thoughts. I'm predicting that Florida State is going to want to go to the Big 10. We'll see what happens there. If the Big 10 will take them, I bet they go there. If not, I bet they end up in the SEC. The bottom line, they will not end up in the ACC. And this is a prediction right now, I guess, by definition, but we're all on the same page here. Florida State will not be in the ACC for an extended period of time. And everyone wants to tell me how much that this is, the grant of rights and how the lawyers have made it ironclad and how there's so much going into this. Like it's so concrete and rock solid and locked down. They can't leave the ACC for X number of years. They said the same thing when the Big 12 expanded. They said the same thing about Oklahoma and Texas leaving early for the SEC. So until something gets finalized that they can't go to the SEC or the Big Ten, they're leaving the ACC. So that's not really a bold prediction by any stretch of the imagination. You hear what I'm saying? They are leaving. When? Who knows? I bet it's sooner rather than later because of all the tectonic plates shifting within college football. I also think that wherever Florida State goes, Clemson's going with them. Because right now, to keep it a buck, we all understand this, Clemson and Florida State are paying rent in the ACC, not just for themselves, for everybody involved. They are the breadwinners. They bring home the majority of the pie, and they take home a smaller slice. No way for that to be sustainable, especially not in today's modern college football where teams are making buku money. All right? Now, Oregon and Washington is the next school I want to talk about, the next two schools I want to talk about. There's a lot of smoke around them going to the Big Ten. And honestly, don't you think it's a little bit funny? There's smoke around Florida State and where they could go, and then the Big Ten, and this report comes out about them grabbing Oregon and Washington. So maybe there's more smoke that we're not getting wind of to Florida State and the SEC, but we'll see what happens there. Oregon and Washington, they're not staying in the Pac-12. Same situation that Clemson and Florida State are in the ACC is the same for Oregon and Washington. They're bringing too much in. They're not making enough. Even more so, probably more importantly, they can make much more being in the Big Ten. And in the name of what college football is right now, it is about bringing home the greenbacks. It is about having resources. Oregon, very well resourced. They would be a big add to the Big Ten. Washington, whole Seattle market. You understand what I'm saying here. The fit is evident. The fit is there. And with that happening, I also think the smoke around the four corner schools being in the Big 12, that being Colorado, who's already there, Utah, Arizona State, I think they all end up joining that. Okay, so my predictions are those. Florida State and Clemson, they're leaving the ACC. I'm keeping an eye on the SEC, but if they can go to the Big Ten, they will go to the Big Ten because that's a bigger payday. Same thing for Oregon and Washington. I think there's smoke. There's probably fire there. Oregon and Washington to the Big Ten makes a lot of sense. Put me down as a prediction for that. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you like the video. Make sure you follow me on Twitter and Instagram at JD Piquel. I'm not asking you anything more than that. So thank you in advance. So here's my thoughts on this, man. Don't tap me on the shoulder until we get something real. Because the room is so small and there's so many powerful people with money and influence, and it's there's a lot of narrative control going on right now. I don't like hearing there's smoke around this school to this conference and this school to that conference. I'm here for it. I understand that we got to talk about it, and I appreciate everybody keeping us in the know, but things tend to change so quickly within the conference realignment conversation. And I'd be more about this, honestly, if we were here in March and this was what we were talking about. And it's hey, great college football season, tectonic plate shifting, though. Let's unpack it. It's not the thing, though. We're 23 days away from week 0 of the college football season, man. I'm trying to sit down and watch a movie. I don't want you blowing up my phone and telling me that you're going on vacation somewhere. That's cool. We'll talk about it when you get back. Talk about it when you actually have the flight booked, when we have something final. I don't want to hear about what might happen, what could happen. Just tell me when it's going to happen, all right? Tell me when something is solidified, signed, sealed, delivered, then let's break it down. Because you and I, we're the same way. We're college football fans, man. We're not realignment fans, right? We have to deal with realignment. Realignment's a real thing, and I understand there are people that make a lot of money, and there's a lot of money going into the sport, so I understand it, I respect it, but it's not what we care about. It's not what we get up on Saturday for. I don't turn on College Game Day on Saturday morning and say, man, I hope there's realignment news today. No, I want to see what they're picking with my team. That's it. And that's the same way I feel right now. To be real, I don't know that there is anything with realignment that lights my fire, and I think you're kind of the same way. So until something gets solidified, I'm going to be slow to trust. Because Oklahoma and Texas, it was a done deal. It was reported, hey, they are not going to the SEC early. We came down to this very studio, looked in that camera, said, hey, what we're hearing, they're not going to the SEC early. Sorry about it. That's the way this thing is rolling. Wouldn't you know it? A week later, report comes out, hey, good news, they're going to the SEC early. That's very convenient, isn't it? That is very convenient how quickly that news shifted. So what I'm saying is nothing is concrete until it is, and until we get something concrete, then we can really unpack this. Then we can have a little bit more back and forth conversation, get excited about what it means for college football. Or I guess for some of us, be unexcited about what it means for college football. But we're 23 days away. Let's lock in. Realignment. Let me know when we're actually getting something here concrete getting done, all right? It sounds naive. It sounds a little bit maybe even irresponsible. Not that we're not paying attention to this, but even so, man, like college football, this season, that has our attention right now. So when there's something concrete, let us know. Now, something that's about to become more and more concrete here in the next few days, KJ Bolden, 5-star safety out of the state of Georgia playing at Buford High School. He is going to make his college decision right here on the On3 YouTube channel this coming Saturday. And guess who's hosting it? Our very own national recruiting analyst, Josh Newberg. And so Josh was kind enough to sit down with us and kind of give us a little preview as to what to expect when it comes to KJ Bolden's commitment and honestly where things stand right now, because this is an interesting situation and I don't want to steal too much of Josh's thunder and breaking it down. So without further ado, here is the segment breaking down and previewing the commitment of 5-star safety, KJ Bolden. We have an absolutely enormous commitment coming this Saturday, 7:30 Eastern. Number one safety in the entire country, KJ Bolden at a Buford High School in Georgia, is making his decision. And to break it all down before we get to the commitment itself this coming weekend is national recruiting analyst for us here at On3, Josh Newberg. Josh, how we doing, man?
Gearing up for a commit-a-thon of a weekend because KJ Bolden is not the only one. That day on Saturday, August 5th, we also have 4-star wide receiver Amari Jefferson. He's going to commit. Will it be Tennessee? Will it be Alabama? And then on Sunday, it's not over. Nathaniel Frazier out of California, 4-star running back, picking between Oregon, Georgia, Alabama. It's going to be one heck of a weekend, JD. Dialed into the On3 YouTube channel.
Marathon. Absolute marathon. Like I said, like Josh just said, make sure you're subscribed right here so you don't miss any of those commitments. KJ Bolden, the one we're about to break down right now. And Josh, you are hosting that commitment. Going to be an absolute bonanza commitment when he does make his final decision. But when it comes to the buzz right now, it feels extremely undecided. We were talking earlier in the week, and it's like, hey, a lot of the schools that are in the mix right now feel a relative sense of confidence, thinking they're going to be the school. Why is there so unclear of a picture right now for KJ Bolden?
KJ's just done an incredible job of keeping this close to the vest in terms of where he's leaning, but also he's a very charismatic figure in this recruitment. He talks up these teams. He goes on visits. He loves them. He tells you why he loved him, exactly who he has a relationship on that staff. He makes it sound like they're all in a good position, but we know he can only pick one.
There's a couple of schools that are getting the lion's share of the love right now. Where do you think sit right now in terms of the schools that are really in it for KJ Bolden come this Saturday?
Well, out of that top 5, I think we can right now kind of set 2 aside. Maybe not eliminate them in total, but I think Ohio State and Alabama, as we've gotten in this 7-day warning per se of his commitment, I think Ohio State and Alabama have kind of lost a little bit of traction here when we talk about who is going to land KJ Bolden. And coming into focus, you have Georgia, Auburn, and Florida State. Right now, Florida State and Auburn have been surging. Georgia, the in-state program, the defending national champions, they have been long time thought to be the favorite. Maybe the team to beat throughout all this, but Auburn and Florida State making a whole lot of noise down the stretch, and really, that's who a lot of people are talking about this week, Florida State and Auburn.
And that's the interesting thing to me, Josh, because if I'm tracking these visits, I'm like, okay, double-digit visits to Georgia, in-state school is Georgia, and so it felt for a while there like, hey, Georgia's kind of the school to beat, but then when I work that backwards, I'm like, well, he's been there double-digit times. If you were sold on a place, why not commit already to the Dogs? Where do the Dogs stand right now, Josh?
Yeah, I think they do have a great shot here. But one of the things that causes some pessimism amongst experts is the fact that KJ Bolden goes to Buford. And not that Buford is adversary of Georgia, but it's just not, it hasn't been an automatic school for Georgia in the past. So although he's an in-state prospect and although Georgia is back-to-back defending champs and he has made a lot of trips there, There's other reasons for KJ Bolden to look around. You know, there's playing time, there's relationships. He's a good friend to a lot of these commitments on other schools' rosters. And right now, Georgia is just battling it out like the other programs. They are certainly not a lock as we head into decision day on Saturday.
Yeah, if it's one thing I'm not doing, it's ever counting Kirby Smart out. But they've got their fair share of competition right now, and one of those schools very firmly in the mix that you talked about, the Auburn Tigers. Josh, if I had any more eligibility and I went to Big Cat Weekend, I would seriously consider taking a look at Auburn, because they were throwing Hugh Freeze in the pool. They're flipping 5 stars, and KJ Bolden was there for all of that. Where does Auburn sit right now?
In a really good spot. And a lot of Auburn fans are biting their nails right now because they feel good. And right now, maybe 2 months ago, they didn't feel really a whole lot when it came to KJ Bolden's recruitment. But today, as we sit 48 hours out from his decision, Auburn fans are feeling really good. And that's because he took the last visit to Auburn. He was at Big Cat Weekend, as you said, the final visit before his decision, the last face-to-face contact that he's going to have with any of his finalists was Auburn's head coach, Hugh Freeze. Now, coming out of the visit, KJ said that he nearly committed. He did insinuate that there was that level of excitement there. And he also said that when he's doing his final phone calls, he's going to set Hugh Freeze for last. So the final face that he saw face-to-face was Hugh Freeze, and he says the final coach that he plans to talk to will be Hugh Freeze. Now, part of me wonders about all of this Auburn smoke, and it makes me wonder a little bit, JD, does KJ Bolden know what he's doing here? Because he's played things so close to his vest the entire time. Is he blowing this Auburn smoke? Because he's getting ahead a little bit, saying that he nearly committed. That's not the typical words you hear from KJ Bolden coming out of these visits. So I just wonder, either the Tigers are in a really good place or they're being used as a smokescreen for maybe a Georgia or a Florida State. We will see. Hopes are high out on the plains, and KJ Bolden's going to make his decision here in 48 hours.
It sounds like hopes are high for a good reason, hearing the feedback from that visit. But there's one more school that I want to talk about with you, Josh, and that's Florida State. Kind of a fascinating position, as it sounds like the way they've kind of surged in this recruitment right now. Obviously, there's a little bit of an emotional appeal there for KJ Bolden, having rooting for Florida State when he was growing up. Where's Florida State at in this race?
Well, our guy here at On3, Chad Simmons, put the news out about 3 weeks ago that, his sources were telling him FSU is a player, they're surging in this thing, and they are a legitimate threat. That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, Florida State has not gone anywhere. The one thing that really makes me consider Florida State and wonder what's happening here is that KJ's been on campus in Tallahassee multiple times this summer, but did not use an official visit on FSU. He took an official visit to Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, Auburn, but he has not used his official visit on Florida State. He says he plans on taking it in the fall. Now, if he commits to Florida State, of course, okay, he didn't use his official. He's going to go there in the fall for a game as a commit. But if he doesn't commit to Florida State, I question if that official visit ever gets used. And you have to wonder, did FSU not take advantage of the possibility of bringing him in on an official? But nonetheless, the Noles are right there. Pat Surtain, FSU's defensive backs coach, has the Noles in position to potentially land him in about 48 hours from now. We'll find out.
The drama of college football recruiting is just so awesome. Like, legitimately, we get closer to a decision, and around this time, like, the RPM kind of starts to tick around, and we think we know where this kid's going to go. And like, for KJ Bolden, you just walked through 3 teams that I think all feel relatively confident they're going to be in it for KJ Bolden. So Josh, I got to ask you this before we let you go. Who would this commitment mean the most to of those 3 schools?
Yeah, to take you behind the curtain just a little bit, entering these live commitments, I generally either know or have a very good idea where the prospect's going. I'll tell you right now, we don't have any idea. KJ Bolden hasn't told us. He hasn't told any coaches. Who would it mean the most to right now? It's got to mean the most right now to Auburn. Having Hugh Freeze enter this year 1 recruiting cycle and to flip a Perry Thompson, a DeMarcus Riddick, and then go toe-to-toe with in-state Alabama and the defending champion Georgia Bulldogs to land KJ Bolden. I think it would be the most meaningful commitment to Auburn right now, but that's not to say FSU and Georgia fans aren't going to celebrate if they land him as well.
Josh, I'm not big on math, but that's 15 stars for Auburn. Should they land KJ Bolden, Perry Thompson, DeMarcus Riddick, like, that's a whole lot of stars for Auburn headed the right direction under Hugh Freeze. Should they land a KJ Bolden? Well, Josh is holding it down on the recruitment, or on the commitment and the recruitment side of things. Make sure you're subscribed here. You're going to get the inside scoop. You're going to get the hard count like y'all that are tuned in right now, so we thank you for that. You're going to catch the commitment of all these big names, KJ Bolden being one of them. So lock it in. Make sure you're here on Saturday with Josh and throughout the weekend for all these big commitments. Josh, thanks so much, man. Go get rested up and ready for the commitments.
All right. Thanks a lot, JD.
So there you have it. KJ Bolden. Stage is set. He is committing on this very platform Saturday night with Josh Newberg. Subscribe so you do not miss where he's going to school. I promise you, it's going to be a phenomenal show, phenomenal commitment presentation. Lock it in because he's not the only one committing on this channel, both this weekend and in the future. Lock it in right here. So, one school that is hopeful to land the services of five-star safety KJ Bolden is Florida State. And Florida State is actually next up for us on our Pulse of the Program series. So, in Tallahassee, Florida, they are going into year 4 of the Mike Norvell era. And the vibes are high, man. The vibes are really immaculate right now in Tallahassee. You just had a 10-win season in 2022. You got your guy a new contract, Mike Norvell, through 2029. Suits and ties yelling out, pay the guys. We love it. They are right now set for a big 2023. They're recruiting really well. Like I just said, this thing is picking up steam. So the Pulse of the Program in Tallahassee at Florida State, the Pulse of the Program is bags are packed. And this is not a realignment joke, first of all. Second of all, the bags are packed not for a vacation. They're packed because they are moving somewhere else. So to break that down here just a second, want to make sure we let y'all know this show, the entire show, the hard count is brought to you by our friends at Bird Dogs. Now, Bird Dogs are phenomenal for the summertime because here's the deal. You wear these shorts and they're kind of that awkward like khaki fabric material and they're hot. They don't breathe well. You're walking around at the pool. I don't know why you would wear khakis to the pool. You can wear Bird Dogs to the pool though. Maybe you're walking around at the amusement park. Whatever it is, those things are going to sweat. They're going to make you hot and they're just going to get all wet and uncomfortable. Bird Dogs are breathable. Nice stretchy material. You can go to the office. You can go put in 40 hours during the week and go run a 40 on the weekend and just wear Bird Dogs and you're good to go. So Bird Dogs look good, feel good. They are going to be something you do not want to take off, I promise you. So if you buy something from birddogs.com, use promo code JD and we'll get you a nice little hat to commit with here. Little Bird Dogs hat, beautiful fabric, breathable, nice for whatever kind of activity you want to partake in. So we appreciate Bird Dogs. Like I was saying, the Pulse of the Program at Florida State is bags are packed. And for the fan base, this, again, is not a thing where you're just looking to go somewhere for a short period of time, nice little vacation, get out of Florida and go, get some refreshment in a different location. This is we are moving. And they're not moving. It's not, again, not a conference realignment joke. They are moving expectations. They are back. They are back to what they have expected at Florida State for a really long time because right now, like I said, you're recruiting really well. Just had a 10-win season. And right now, you are expecting an ACC title. You are expecting to compete for the college football playoff. You are expecting to be the top dog yet again in the state of Florida. And that isn't somewhere Florida State has been since Mike Norvell has been there. The bags are packed. They have spent the last couple of years figuring things out, getting their bearings, making sure they have everything in order, in place to be successful. And right now, Florida State has their bags packed and ready to roll to compete at a new level. Same feel internally. The bags are packed. And the interesting thing about Florida State is this is not going to be a situation where they have new leadership within that locker room. Because that's the thing you think about, right? Whenever you have one great season, well, man, that's so great. We had that, but those leaders now, they're gone. They went to the NFL. They graduated. We got to have new guys step up. No. You get another year under Jordan Travis. You get another year with Fabian Levitt. You get another year with Jared Verse. The continuity, the culture is being solidified at Florida State. So with those guys in the locker room that are under that leadership, they get another chance now to see how it's done before they get past the reins this coming season. I say this coming season when it comes to 2024. So they're not expecting what they used to expect at Florida State. Their bags are packed to compete for new things. In that fan base and in that locker room, the bags are packed. They're moving expectations. And it's a familiar place for Florida State, not under Mike Norvell, but that brand, that logo at Florida State, this is what they're used to. Their bags are packed, but to move back into where they've been before, back into the top tier of the college football landscape. And I love when Florida State's competing at an elite level. I love it when the entire state of Florida, the Gators, Miami, whatever it is, I love when that state has teams that are all at the top of their game, because I think that makes rivalries great. But talk about Florida State, the bags are packed. They feel like they are now waiting on everybody else within that state. They feel like, hey, we're here now. We've done our part. This thing ain't going nowhere, especially with the expanded playoff. We got our coach here for a while. We're recruiting at the time of us being live right now, a top 10 level. Like, Florida State feels really good about where they are right now, and their bags are packed for new expectations and new achievements and new things to pack in that trophy case when they arrive. So that's the Polster program at Florida State. Now, beautiful part about this show, for all of y'all that are new, welcome. We appreciate you being tuned in right now. We talk college football year round. We're going to break down some of your thoughts and concerns. And to do that, we welcome on the heavy lifter extraordinaire, the keeper of the queue, a man who is feared and loved. They are afraid about how much they love him in the Germantown Kickball League, Nick Brake. Nick, how we doing, big dog? How we doing?
Doing good. Let's get to some questions,
Let's
man.
do it.
First off, we're going to I found it. First off, we're going to get to Rocky Top Tom, hashtag SJD. Does the NIL, conference realignment, transfer portal, kids sit in bowl games, going to pro, ruin the traditions and just the sport that we all loved? I think so. That's a very pessimistic view from Rocky Top Tom.
Rocky Top Tom. I would say one thing, though. I think it's going to benefit your Vols. Like, NIL has benefited them. It seems like realignment, we'll see how it impacts them. The expanded playoff, like Tennessee, if things keep going how they're going under Josh Heupel, like, things are probably headed the right direction. So, but I hear what you're saying. I'm not a fan of bowl opt-outs. I'm not afraid of it either. I'm a fan. I'm not a fan. We're getting to the end of our rope here. I am not a fan of the conference realignment dominoes in the way that they have fallen. True story. But I don't think it ruins our sport. I would liken it a lot to a party that you didn't want to go to. You never wanted to be there, but your friends said, hey, we're going, we're dragging you to it, and you're there now. You are at the party. You did not drive. Somebody else took you there. So you're at the party, and you have two options. You can just kind of sulk and be frustrated with it, or you can say, hey, here with my friends, this is still a good time. I still enjoy this. We still love college football with every fiber of our being. We're going to enjoy it. We're going to be okay because we still have games being played. When toe meets leather, and we got Tennessee lining it up for the third Saturday of October against Alabama, realignment, NIL, all that, that's kind of going to fade into the background, and we'll just have the game again. So I don't love all the changes, but I don't think it ruins it. How's that for you, Nick? We got time for one more here, brother?
Yeah, man. Long show today. We got to get out of here.
I know, man. It's a marathon. I love it, though.
Well, Craig asked, hashtag AskJD, do you think Nebraska's new, tough, hard-nosed playing style will beat a flashy Wisconsin in the piercing cold November game? I'll take work boots over the Gucci shoes any day. Craig works in the farm, remember? So
I love it, Craig. Yeah, Craig is a absolute lifer, locking into the show while herding cattle, if I remember correctly. Is that correct, Nick?
Cattle.
Absolute dog. So shout out to Craig, big fan of his, as we appreciate having him part of this program. I don't know that Wisconsin's going to be Gucci shoes, Craig, is my one thing I would say there. I think Wisconsin is still going to have that hard hat mentality, and the roster that Luke Fickell inherited was in a different place than what Matt Rule inherited. So in 2 to 3 years, how does this game look? I don't know, but I think Luke Fickell in Wisconsin, if we had to call it right now in August, I'll probably take Wisconsin, but you know what? We'll reevaluate that one when it gets here, without a doubt. But appreciate Craig being locked in while he's herding the beautiful livestock of this great country. Appreciate that, Craig. Hey, Nick, thanks so much for jumping on, man, and making it happen and being just locked in for the entirety of the operation, elements, the chat, all that. You got a lot of plates spinning, man. So thanks for making it happen, brother.
Yeah, and if we didn't get to your question today, I said this last time. I'll keep saying it, though. We'll get to it on Tuesday. Hopefully have a little more time to do so. So, JD, with that being said, I'll see you then.
Nick, the man, the myth, the legend, Legatron. Dang it, I wish I had told him or asked him about his kickball game. I think it went well, though, in terms of his individual performance. The hunt for 700 continues as his team is on a playoff tear right now, or set to make a playoff tear, rather. So, like where they sit, heading into August. Dreams are made in August in Germantown Kickball League. There's no way around that. So I told y'all before the show started, hey, we get to over 100 likes before we get off air. We'll tell y'all our new schedule for the college football season. Man of my word, over 100 likes. Had no doubts y'all would do it. So to, I guess, get right to the point, we will be adding a third live show during the week. So a lot of y'all woke up with us on Sundays, and we had a ton of videos out for y'all. It was the Sunday sprint, and we were just attacking everything college football from the day before, getting it to y'all as quickly as possible that morning. We are still going to do that. We're still keeping the Tuesday show, still keeping the Thursday show. The beautiful part is we're going to make a third show right in between those on Wednesday. So same time, 11 a.m. Eastern. We got Tuesday, we got Wednesday, we got Thursday. That is starting the week of August 14th. So lock in. Going to be an absolute blast. Can't wait to interact with y'all on a more consistent basis. We appreciate y'all being a part of this. We are thankful to do this. We are thankful that y'all tune in and allow us to do this. No other thing to be said, man. It's time to ball now. 23 days till the college football season gets rolling. We're fired up. I know y'all are fired up, and we appreciate y'all being locked in. Again, we appreciate y'all. We love y'all, man. Almost there. We're going to keep this party rolling. We will see y'all next time.